Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. The Lakers are now 0-2 after Thursday night's 103-97 loss to the Clippers in the home opener. But is it okay to take your finger off the panic button? That's next on Locked On Lakers.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. Never behind a paywall, always free for you to listen. Locked On Lakers on YouTube. So where you can go to get the show a little bit early, be part of a great Lakers community of people. Get yourself involved with the show. If you ask us questions, you leave us comments on that YouTube page. We love to bring that stuff into the show itself. So you might get to hear your name heard on a big famous podcast, Andy. So want to let people know that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. My recommendation to people, Andy, if BetOnline has a line on the Lakers and three-point shooting, I would take the under.
Doesn't matter what it is.
Don't even need to see where they set it.
I will bet that one blind for the time being.
Just take the under.
Don't need the details.
So the shooting is one of the things that we want to talk about today. Russell Westbrook finished 0 for 11 in Thursday night's loss. That is something that we would like to talk about. It is related in many ways to the Rob Pelinka news. The Lakers are perhaps going to wait about 20 games into the season near Thanksgiving before they do anything crazy with this roster, make any moves. People may be missing what's going on there with that. And then LeBron talked about the shooting after Thursday night's game, after talking about it in some detail after Tuesday's game. So plenty to try to get through.
Anthony Davis, he fell hard on the ground, but like Chumbawamba, got back up again and never.
Danny boy.
Look, man. We'll get into this because every time AD falls down, because again, he is the Chumbawamba of the NBA, you get nervous, but he was very determined to stay in this game. It was very clear he had no intention of leaving the game. And while at times he was just outwardly, visibly uncomfortable, and on a few possessions, frankly, couldn't even move well enough to be on the court, it was important to him to be out there, and on balance, he played a really good game.
He did, and AD after the game on Thursday acknowledged that hurt. I mean, look, people like, Anthony Davis and like every little Nick sends in the locker room, all those kind of, had he gotten hurt, like go find the replay of this fall. If you happen to miss it, you weren't watching the game or whatever. If he had actually injured himself in this, I don't think anybody would have been like, soft. I mean, no, that looked incredibly painful. So it was good news that he was able to finish the game. I'm sure he said afterwards he thinks he'll be okay for Sunday. I might ask him again Friday morning.
He's going to need to sleep standing up, like strapped to a block of ice just the whole night. Because you don't want to, if you are Anthony Davis, tighten up, stiffen up at all.
Yeah, no, we'll see. But it could have been a lot worse. I think everybody saw the season flash before them. They lost. They are now 0-2. Keep things in perspective. These are, on paper at least, by what the pundits say, Andy, the two best teams in the Western Conference, arguably two of the best teams in basketball. So the 0-2 record isn't such a problem. On the one hand, they looked significantly better, I thought, Thursday than Tuesday. On the other hand, they kind of lost for exactly the same reasons. So where are you now after game 2 in terms of, panic versus reassurance?
Well, I would say in certain respects, I'm more reassured than panicked. Because, for example, the three-point shooting that we will get into over the course of this show, that was exactly what everybody expected heading into this season. The Lakers, we knew that shooting was an issue. And when the dust had settled on the reconstruction of this roster, it was frankly not addressed in a
No,
significant
no.
way.
And for people who didn't see, the Lakers were 9 of 45 from 3-point. 45 is a really big number in terms of the amount of 3-pointers they took. They made 9 of them. That is 20%. That's actually worse than they shot from 3-point range on Tuesday. And Tuesday was catastrophically bad. And I should remind people they made their first 2, so they were 7 of 43 after that.
They are 22% on the season so far. And while I don't think it's going to remain this bad over the course of the season, like it's almost impossible over the course of a year to shoot this bad. This is something that was maybe the reddest of all flags heading into this season for the Lakers. And it is something that clearly needs to be addressed, as LeBron, I thought, very colorfully put it after Tuesday's loss. They are lacking lasers on this team. And then afterwards, LeBron, it was interesting. The way he talked about it after the Clippers loss made the opening night comments feel, I think, equally matter of fact, because there were a lot of people who took it as messaging. And I know with LeBron, nothing he ever says is without intention. But he talked about it just like, look, there are going to be nights where we shoot really well. This is going to happen for us. We're not going to be like this the whole year, but we are not a team where shooting can be the formula. So we're going to have to manufacture wins in other ways than shooting. And tonight, in terms of things that are reassuring, you saw them play not perfect defense, but extremely energetic, often very disruptive. They got back into the game multiple times on the strength of their defense. They did a lot of offense created by defense. I thought everybody on the floor for the Lakers competed really hard, and I think often very smart defensively. That was something that you weren't quite as secure in knowledge heading into this season that it could be possible. Yeah, so that is something that you feel better about.
The Clippers shot 46% overall, but they also turned the ball over 21 times. Yeah. And so, the Lakers managed to make that work that way. The Lakers put them at the line. This is something Darvin Ham talked about. They fouled too much, and fouled too many jumpers, but some of that comes from the type of aggressiveness that you're talking about. You have to be aggressive. You also have to be smart. The Clippers missed 11 free throws, which certainly helped the Lakers. Also only shot 30% from 3-point range, which is they are actually a good 3-point shooting team. So, when I say I feel like they lost for the same reasons, you talked about shooting, and I think tonight, Thursday night, they had a supporting cast problem. It was slightly different than the problem they had on Tuesday, in the sense that Tuesday it was James Davis and Westbrook who kind of came through. Westbrook was 0 for 11 on Thursday. Lonnie Walker was great, 26 points. He gave you the rest of the offense you needed, but after that, no other Laker was in double digits, and only one other Laker cracked 5 points. Westbrook 0 for 11. Kendrick Nunn 0 for 7, only played 11 minutes, which is interesting. Pat Bev 1 for 7 on the night. They were bad, and the Lakers only scored 42 points in the second half. Some of that is AD, clearly laboring down the stretch, but some of that is just they're going to be a very easy team to defend late in games because it's easy to collapse the paint, load up on LeBron, load up on AD, and go ahead and let somebody else take shots to beat you. And it doesn't really matter who, because essentially the Lakers are playing 2.5 on 5, it seems like.
Depending on who the half player is, and I guess depending on if they can get themselves to even slightly below league average from behind the arc, then they become a different story. because you may still get left open some of those shots and teams daring you to take and make them. But then if you make them, if the Lakers make 3 more threes in this game, which makes them a paltry 12 of 45, which is still atrocious,
really bad.
They win. They actually win.
Yeah, it's a good way of thinking about it. Like the form, I talk about, we'll get to Russ here in a second, but you can be a bad 3-point shooting team if you make your free throws. 22-26. That was really good. Like that quietly was a really nice thing to see from the Lakers, making free throws. You can be a bad 3-point shooting team if you don't turn the ball over. 9 turnovers on Thursday for the Lakers. Very clean for a team that has typically struggled with it. But like that's predicated on the idea of being like regular bad. So if they make their free throws, if they can be a team that cuts down on the turnovers, they might be able to find paths to victory. But 20% is so bad, particularly if you're going to decide to take 45 of these things, and you're going to be forced into taking a lot of threes if the percentages stays low. It's kind of it's one of those catch-22 type sort of situations. 0 for 11 for Russell Westbrook. Andy, afterwards, he described his game as solid, and I am patiently waiting for that to go viral. That's next on Locked On Lakers.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net, your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest, easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, golf, and of course, the NBA. The Lakers, as of my last check, are 22-1, according to our friends at BetOnline, to win the championship. They fell from 20-1 after the season opener, although, as we're going to get into over the course of this show, you could be optimistic enough to feel like maybe they'll go back up to 20-1 after tonight's loss, because they at least played a lot better. Russell Westbrook,
split the difference, we'll say 21.
Russell Westbrook getting 3-1 odds as the first star player to request a trade, just a hair behind Kevin Durant at 2.5-1. They just remain connected over the course of their careers. Head to the website today, use your mobile device, learn more about the trends in action. Bet online where the game starts.
Okay, I mentioned the complete absence of supporting cast once you got past Lonnie Walker. LeBron, 20 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 block shots, steal. The numbers weren't massive by LeBron standards.
He had a couple just phenomenal blocks. And he had a goaltend that it was a goaltend, but I feel like the basket for the Clippers should have only counted for 1.
Yeah.
Because the way LeBron skied in for this thing, he's almost 38 years oold. You want to give the old man
it was like the jaw play, the jaw charge on Wednesday night where he jumped over. I forget it was like Cam Reddish or somebody like that. Like it was a charge, and Josh should get a foul for that. But he should also get 1 point.
Yeah,
I feel like if you do that, the referee should have the discretion to be like, you know what, 1 point, you get that. That's for you. LeBron played was solid. AD 25 points, 8 rebounds, again playing in obvious discomfort. 26 points from Lonnie Walker. Westbrook was 0 for 11. He had a ton of company, but he is going to be the focal point of the anger and the frustration, in part because it is materially different when Westbrook goes 0 for 11 versus 1 for 7 for Pat Beverly. They are not supposed to be at the same level.
0 for 7
for Kendrick Nunn. Kendrick Nunn is not supposed to be, you understand what I'm getting at, but he's not supposed to be at Russell Westbrook's level. Russell Westbrook's make $47 million a year. After the game, Andy, Westbrook described, he was asked how he thought he played. The door being opened to him saying something self-critical or self-aware, and he instead went with solid. Played hard, competed, blah, 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 blah. He's going to get throttled for that.
You know what, though? Russ is going to get throttled no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Russ could have been 12 for 11 tonight, and fans would have still been angry about it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, in some respects, who gives a bleep? Like, there is very little Russ could say that would make Laker fans feel good by now. Like, if Russ said, put this whole loss on me, Laker fans would say, way ahead of you, buddy. Way the hell ahead of you. So, in that sense, who cares? But I would argue in certain respects, given what I know the Lakers internally have wanted from Russ, but also, frankly, what fans have wanted from Russ, I would argue actually it was a self aware answer because this was a game where Russell Westbrook competed really hard and often very successfully defensively. Like, he was in the middle of some very key defensive moments.
Fourth quarter, they tried. He got matched up a couple times. I think on Kawhi, Clippers rightly tried to pick on him for that. Picked up consecutive steals. Like,
he also closed out the half, isolated on Kawhi, defended him really well, led to Kawhi getting trapped, and that was the final possession for the Clippers. There were a few plays where he created a basket through a steal he got himself, or by really working over a screen, he helped force a turnover. Like, in that sense, I actually think whether Russ was literally thinking about this in that moment or not, I mean, honestly, I don't think Russ really gives a rat's ass the most time about any of these questions he's asked. He, like Marshawn Lynch, he's just here so he doesn't get fined. But I actually don't think he's entirely wrong. And for what it's worth, that is what LeBron said after the game as well.
Here's what I think is fascinating about this. Setting aside for a moment, we're going to get to the Rob Pelinka comments about, or not Rob Pelinka's comments, the report from Woj about Rob Pelinka's plans for the season.
Boy, if Rob had said that,
oh my God,
what we're about to get into.
Yeah, no, the 20, the Lakers reportedly going to wait, 20 games, see what happens, get to Thanksgiving, and before they trade Russ. Before they, make a big trade.
Before they trade Russ.
I should say, like, before they make a big move, as if it could be anything else. Like, I don't know what it's going to be, but they're going to wait 20 games before they make a move. What the hell else is it going to be? But
it's a weird combination of a Freudian slip and not a Freudian slip.
Right. Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father? What? Set aside for the moment that in theory, Westbrook is supposed to be someone who isn't supposed to go 0 for 11 from the floor, and is supposed to be a quote unquote third star or whatever. What he's getting at is actually part of the problem I was talking about in the last segment with their supporting cast. He did do some things. Like, if he did this every night defensively, Westbrook is a much more viable player on this roster than he was last year.
Yeah.
Instantly. Just that right away. Pat Bev was, Reggie Miller, it was almost a year where I was getting like a restraining order. Reggie Miller was so effusive in his praise for Pat Beverly during the game, for all the work he was doing defensively, and he was scrappy and he was causing stuff to happen. He was edgy. He was doing Pat Bev stuff. And I'm not, okay, sure. He was atrocious offensively. And it's not that those things, the good stuff doesn't matter, but the Lakers are in a place, and the roster is in a place where they can't afford sort of the half games from people. Like, the guys who are supposed to be their best role players can't be halvesies on stuff. Westbrook can't just play a good defensive game. Like, they need him to do other stuff too. Patrick Beverly can't go 1 from 6 from 3-point range or do what he did on Tuesday. They need him to do more than that, even if he is doing all the, hardworking, scrappy defensive stuff. Like, Lonnie Walker, and I'm not saying, Thursday specifically, Lonnie Walker can't score 26 points, but give up 26 defensively. Whether that's Lonnie, Kendrick Nunn, say whoever it is. Their supporting cast needs to elevate in more complete ways than I think sometimes they're going to be capable of. Like, which guys are going to be able to do that on a consistent basis. That's going to be, I think, sort of determines not only how often the Lakers win, but like when they start winning.
Yeah, and it's a sliding scale too. Like, for example, Juan Toscano-Anderson in this game, 8 points on 3 of 7 shooting, 1 of 4 from behind the arc, 4 rebounds, 3 assists,
He
a
was good.
steal. Yeah, but also too, more specifically, that is a Juan Toscano-Anderson game. Like that is Juan Toscano-Anderson, and he had some good defensive moments as well. Like that is him actually doing
Correct.
his part. And, it would be nice if he blew up for 24, but like you can't expect that from him. Like the rare 20-point games this season from Juan Toscano-Anderson, if they happen at all, that's like, the richest of gravy. You know what I mean? Like that's not even something that you can even.
No, you don't want him taking more than 7 shots in 22 minutes. That's not
right. Everybody. So like, to your point, everybody has to provide not just enough support, but the support that is specifically expected from them.
Mm-hmm.
And, Patrick Beverley is also not expected to chip in 25 in a night, but he can't be a minus.
He's not expected, but he is expected to chip in 2.5 3-pointers.
Right.
Yes. And it wasn't that. It wasn't just that. He had a lob to Austin Reeves, which turned into one of the I'm not entirely sure who he thought he was throwing that ball to, but regardless, it was a terrible pass. And we knew it was terrible based on what Reeves then threw Lonnie Walker like a minute later, which was just awesome. Like the whole sequence was great. But he turned the ball over on an out of bound, inbounding the ball from the baseline, threw it away. Like he can't. I understand he's supposed to be there to help bolster the defense and stuff, and hit 3-pointers. He's got to hit the 3-pointers, and he can't be a negative, offensively. If they can find some consistency in this supporting cast, if LeBron and AD do what they've been doing and continue to play, like they could be okay, but it's not going to be easy to find that. It's not the guy. I mean, they're working and they went in the right direction. We'll see what happens on Sunday. Sunday becomes a really big game.
Yeah. Against Portland, it's a matinee game, which matters, A, because these guys all hate playing matinee games, but B, in terms of the time for AD to recover from that fall, every hour matters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, AD even noted that afterwards, that, this is not the greatest time in the world to have a Sunday afternoon game, but such is life.
Yeah. You almost sound like one of those NPR telethons or whatever, like fundraising. Every hour matters. We need you to help us with this. Let's talk about Rob Pelinka in 20 games and what this means that the Lakers won't be trading someone for 20 games or so. And we'll get into that next. So Adrian Wojnarowski at ESPN didn't specify who, Andy. But someone might be on the block, 20 games from now or whatever. The Lakers are going to evaluate things. Rob Pelinka is going to evaluate things for 20 or so games before pulling the trigger on a deal for someone on the roster. We're just not sure who. What was your reaction to this? Because like many things involving Ussel Ray, S-Book Bray or something like that, I think people were kind of missing the point.
Well, I mean, my first reaction was, if this is accurate, what's the Lakers' record after 20 games? Because, you can't make a big deal to advance the team forward if half of that efforting is going to be digging yourself out of the hole that you dug over the first 20 games. Like, you also, I guess, may get an idea over those 20 games. Is it worth doing this right now? And I guess, and Woj is as connected as anybody in the league, so he's as good a source as anybody. Some of this may be them really getting an honest look at the team and trying to figure out, is this the group that we want to fire our last bullet with? Russ and maybe those 2 first-round picks. So they may be wanting to get as informed a look as possible. Again, the downside to that is depending on how desperately you need to make this move in the first place, it may be too little too late before you decide you have all the information you need.
I just feel like it's not very little about this. I think to me is like is about the Lakers saying everybody out there, you guys hold off. We're going to see how this goes. I want to see what this looks like. I mean, do the Lakers want to give it a minute? I think to see if it can work. Absolutely. Do they? But this to me is much less about the Lakers putting things on hold in order to try to make the Westbrook experiment work. I read it as the Lakers are going to, don't think the market is there yet. And they're hoping in 20 games, 25 games, given what people are going to be doing for Wembanyama this year, like the amount of teams that are going to be willing to potentially, I don't mean tank, because like the bottom of the lottery has been kind of leveled out. I do think you're going to see some teams kind of doing the math. I mean, like, is it worth the play-in game to, or would we rather have an 8% or a 9% chance at Scoot Henderson? Like, I do think teams are going to be more teams might be making that evaluation for a generational player. I just feel like they're waiting to see, like I read that as the Lakers are waiting to see what opens up because there's not anything there yet that is worth pulling the trigger on. Nothing's different than it was over the summer. And we already decided that what was there over the summer wasn't good enough to be better than what's behind door number one.
Sure, I understand that. And I don't think you're wrong. But again, the longer you go doing this, the more the trade that might be worth it may not be worth it because of where you are. The other problem with that, though, I think at least, is while there may end up a surprise crap in the bed team that all of a sudden, recalculates the math on all this, the teams that I think realistically are going to be in the Wembanyama sweepstakes or the Scoot Henderson sweepstakes, I don't think any of them have a player better than Miles Turner that you would actually look to acquire. Like, because to me, if you're waiting on these teams to eventually just say, "Uncle, we're going to start tanking," fine. Who, though, is going to offer you somebody that's better than Miles Turner, who I think is the best player connected to any team that is expected to tank at all?
And here's what I respect about Miles Turner. You want to talk about a guy who very obviously wants to be a Laker. And you know how he's showing it, Andy? He got hurt in the opening game. He got hurt before the opening game. And you know how he got hurt before the opening game? He landed on the foot of a ball boy. That is how Miles Turner got hurt. It is, I mean, to some degree, I guess that sort of thing can help the Lakers maybe.
I mean, maybe they're also waiting for like a disgruntled star.
I think that's what it is. They're just waiting for something because what is available now, they know what they're not. Let me figure out how to phrase this because I'm going to get pushback when I say if I say they're not stupid, because people are going to disagree with that when I say that the front office isn't stupid. They are not unaware that Russell Westbrook does not fit. They are not unaware that they would be better off in a perfect world were Russell Westbrook somewhere else. And they are not so naive, I think, as to think that Darvin Ham can sprinkle fairy dust on this whole thing and fix it. They're not that dumb. I mean, they're not that good at their jobs, but they're not that dumb. They know what's happening here. There's just not something they think is better.
That may be.
I don't understand. And to me, you tell me if you disagree. But if you don't think long term that the Miles Turner deal is a better thing for your franchise before the season, I don't know why you would think that 12 games in because the Westbrook thing isn't going well.
I mean, I think it's more just the idea of what do you want to do with this season? Like if you are looking to prioritize competing this season, then you have to make the trade that makes you most competitive, like to a baseline. And I personally think the Turner Hield trade does that. Like, I think in terms of a baseline that, if nothing else, I would consider competitive enough as somebody who both covers this team but also personally roots for this team. I think if you add Miles Turner and Buddy Hield to this team, you can look at yourself as realistically a 5 or 6 seed, maybe in the position to capitalize on some good fortune if some other teams catch some bad breaks. If that's not
the Jazz
good,
fall apart eventually.
Look, if that's not good enough for you, then frankly, I don't know what you're looking for this season, period.
It's a great point. Yeah.
Because what is realistically going to come up better than that? Which, if you don't think anything's better than that, fine. But again, what are you then expecting for this season? Because unless you're waiting for Bradley Beal to walk into the front office with the Wizards and say, I'm out of here, or, Damian Lillard to suddenly decide that he doesn't want to be the greatest Blazer in franchise history, like, what are you expecting to happen? Like, I think Bulls fall apart and DeMar DeRozan? Like,
don't you think ultimately they're just saying that I think they're saying they're punting, they're effectively punting on the season.
And well, I mean, maybe if they are, they are. And look, maybe that is the smartest of 2 bad options in front of them. I'm not even disputing that might not be the most sensible thing to do. I'm just saying what they're waiting on, I don't think is any better than what they could get now.
I agree.
And if that's the case, if you care about this season at all, just pull the trigger on that Miles Turner and Buddy Hield deal, because then at least you play a full season with these guys.
Yeah. And look, I mean, that would make a significant difference in that supporting cast issue that I've been harping on the entire episode. I mean, like, no question.
Before we go, though, I do, because we had talked about at the top of the show some positives, and there was one that we hadn't touched on yet that I just wanted to mention because I think it matters.
Mm-hmm.
This team mentally is so much better than last year's. I mean, we saw them with the fight that they put up over the course of this game. They fell into a few different deficits, and they kept digging themselves out of them through efforting and determination and focus. They are working defensively in ways that last year's team, I mean, they barely talk the talk on it, much less walk the walk. And I think this team is in a better mental place than last year. And that does not fix all of their problems at all, but it matters. And I think it's worth noting.
I will agree that, certainly, as the season went along, the only caveat I would say is it's the second game of the season.
Last year's team by the second game of the season looked like they were already ready to pack it in.
Well, the difference, but there was also a contextual difference with last year's, because last year's team had made assumptions about itself and where they were going.
Whatever the reason. I mean,
you're right. The challenge is going to be keeping the spirit going.
Yeah.
If they are when they are 3-7.
Sure.
And I say that not because I'm 100% sure they're going to be 3-7, but I say that because they could play some pretty decent basketball. Like, they played pretty decent basketball against a really good team.
Yeah.
On Thursday. Like, it wasn't a disaster. And they lost because the Clippers are really good, and they play Denver, and they play a bunch of contenders up and down the Western Conference. Like, they could play well and lose games. And so keeping that spirit, if they find themselves underwater, until they can reach a point in the schedule where they can rally a little bit, like, that will be that will be a test. That's a test for Darvin. That's a test for LeBron. It's a test for AD, because it's really hard for them to be above 500, 10 games in the season, 12 games in the season. That is a really tall order based purely on the schedule.
Yeah.
But trending the right way.
Yep.
It was better on Thursday than it was on Tuesday, and the Lakers certainly hope it will be better on Sunday than it was on Thursday. It will need to be because the Lakers need to pick up a win. It is one of the most winnable games on paper though against an improved Blazers team. It is not this is a much better team than they were last year. We'll see how it goes. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you go to get the show and see it and experience it a little before the audio, folks. We will see everybody on Monday.